Hello everyone, it's 10 Types, joined by Uncommon Fossil, as always, with the Reasonably Effective Podcast episode, this is episode 15, I believe?
I think it is. Yeah, I didn't check, but I believe that's where we're up to now.
Okay, and how's your week been with Pokemon this past week?
All right, it's been a pretty good week. A couple things. I've done some deck building, which is good and bad, right? It can be frustrating, but it's fun to do. So, Arcanine EX deck, which there's some out there, kind of worked on my own build there. That's a solid deck. Worked on some single prize decks that were just disasters that I scrapped after, kind of wasted a day or two on those. And then put together the last one was a Spidops EX Leafeon VMAX going for the big damage on Leafeon because everyone's forgotten about how good that is, and has the stall option too with Spidox increasing the retreat cost. So kind of which has been okay. Which is an okay deck. I think it could use a little more work, but it's not a bad deck, I would say. And then I also completed the battle pass this week. Finished, got up to tier 50, and that gave me a little insight on the economy in live, which I have a video on that. But one thing I'll say is based on the cards that I pulled, and I had a wish list of cards. I pulled cards worth 7,000 credits from the packs I opened going through the battle pass, which is a good number, and I think which could mean that as a budget player, it's worth waiting till you finish the battle pass to start crafting a lot of things because that 7,000 credits is certainly meaningful.
Yeah, just wondering, how many EXs did you pull, or how many EXs do you have? Because I know I have more EXs than you, I'll say that.
Yeah, I didn't pull many EXs, and I know for a fact when I got through tier 25, I hadn't pulled any EXs at that point from the packs. I think I pulled like four in total, maybe from all. You open like 70 packs or something, so I was not hitting
Yeah,
EXs
they're not
at
all,
all.
they're not all Scarlet and Violet though, right? Or are there
Uh,
70 are Scarlet and Violet?
I think they're like right. The free battle pass is only Scarlet and Violet packs, and then the premium pass, the bottom level row is a mix of expansions. So, but I think you get like 70 from just Scarlet and Violet. I pulled maybe four or five EXs in total, I would guess, by the time I was done. So not a lot. So I didn't get that many, and a lot of the wish list, the EXs are the expensive ones, so I didn't get a lot of results there. But amongst the rare, like the rare cards, is where the cost came in to be meaningful because to craft a rare is like 4 or 425 depending whether it's a hollow or not. So that's where most of the value came in for me.
Yeah. How much are they all? Are all the different EXs the same cost? I'm trying to see, but I don't have. I can't craft any because I have too many.
You have too many. Yeah, I mean, I've been crafting a number, so they're mostly 600. I think some, as long as it's the base art, it is. I'm not sure about like the ones from the special releases, right? The
What?
promos.
Oh yeah.
There are a couple promo only ones. They might be a little more, but yeah, the cost of the EX is still it's a much cheaper than the V's and a lot cheaper than the V Max or V Stars. So that helps for sure with craft. At this point, I can. I mean, obviously you've migrated, I've migrated, so we have a good number of resources, but it's certainly obtainable even without that. I think to craft all the cards you want for an expansion, which I don't think we could do in PTCGO within that 3 month period. You couldn't trade for all the cards that you wanted. I don't think
Yeah,
from a
you'd
new set.
never. For me, I remember I'd get I'd get the like new deck. Say it was Palkia, Arceus, Giratina.
Hmm.
I got them one set after. So
Right.
at that point, they're not anywhere near as like new. So
Right. So I do think the new economy in live is more budget friendly, which is good to see.
yeah.
And,
Um,
and how
ex-
and how's your week been going?
it's been going pretty well. I haven't actually been playing as much Pokemon. I've been a bit burnt out, but I've been
Hmm.
doing well, burnt out with playing the game. But I've been messing around with some other stuff. I've been making tier lists, lots of tier lists. I'm sure my viewers are so happy about that. I'm gonna make less tier lists, but yeah, I've been enjoying making tier lists because they're like fun and easy, and just silly content. And then I have some like bigger videos planned that I've worked on. Some of them I haven't worked on most of them, but with my like year like having like a more free time. I'm gonna have more free time coming up,
Mhm.
so I'm excited to be working on more projects. And I've been like thinking of those ideas and stuff.
All right, good. Yeah, I mean, there's like an ebb and flow to Pokemon of engagement, right? Kind of things are more fun and fresh at times. Part of this week, I was kind of been looking around for decks to play at times. Kind of at times, it gets a little stale, I think. So everyone goes through that.
Yeah. Oh, also, obviously there was the European Championship or something. That was like a
Right.
week or two ago. And there were decks from that, and I was looking at those. And I was playing the Gardevoir deck, and it just whenever I play Gardevoir, it doesn't work at all. And even the Arceus deck, like I don't get some of the plays in the Arceus Duraludon list. Like, why does it play Lost City? To me, that doesn't really make sense over like Crystal Cave, which is so strong.
Yeah, I mean, that one's a bit odd to me.
I heard someone
I,
saying that like there oftentimes when a deck will have only like one solid answer to Duraludon, and you can get rid of it, but like or the
I
Alolan
mean, it
Vulpix
does.
V Star, but like I don't, I'm
Right.
not fully convinced. I feel like Crystal Cave will provide a little bit of value in every matchup, um, because the damage output actually is lower than like it was like before Scarlet and Violet. The amount of damage decks were hitting was much higher than it is now. Now most decks
Yeah.
aren't like one shotting you.
Yeah, right. It's very rare you're going to get one shot. So healing, taking an extra turn to get knocked out's a big deal. I guess the path to the peak is shutting off. Obviously, Gardevoir gets really hurt by that for sure. Because if you can knock out the Gardevoir or keep them from accelerating energy, they have a problem.
Wait, what about? But no, it plays like Lost City.
Yeah, they probably can bump it. Correct.
Oh
But if they
yeah,
can't bump it though, right? I mean, if you put it down,
no, but what's Lost City do to like
oh,
go?
Lost City. Oh, yeah, no, it doesn't. You're right. I'm not
Um,
sure what that's there for. So
yeah, I
good.
mean obviously you could like Lost Zone
Sorry.
both the Gardevoirs or something, but at that point you're probably winning anyway if you're like carrying multiple EXs. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean it's like a good card I guess, but I don't know. I've heard some people like say various things, but I haven't heard like a super convincing argument yet. Um, Yeah,
Yeah.
anyways. So I think it's time we move into our first segment here today,
Yeah.
which is we're going to be talking about one of my favorite cards from the newest set. Actually, possibly my favorite from the newest set, Skwovet, from Scarlet and Violet. And it has a really
Mhm.
interesting ability here, a Nest Stash, that says once during your turn, you may shuffle your hand and put it on the bottom of your deck. If you put any cards there, then you draw a card, which is at face value. To some people, it doesn't seem super strong. You're getting rid of your whole hand, and then you're only drawing one card. But
Yeah.
to me, this is like a really cool card.
Yeah. I mean, look, having going from a multi card hand to one card is almost is bad in and of itself, right? You need something else to go with it. Although, I don't think you're not going to just play a Skwovet engine of, oh, this is my draw. I'll see one extra card each turn, right? But it allows itself to pair with a couple other cards, right? The simplest is Bibero, which I've been using some. I put that, I believe, in my Arcanine EX deck, which is the first time I've used it, right? Bibero, Industrious Incisors, you draw until you have 5 cards in hand. So you have whatever, like you start off the turn with, say, 5 cards in hand. You play the cards you want. You Skwovet it, get rid of your hand, draw one, and then you usually that's not a playable card in that case, the barrel, and then you because you get a random card, then you barrel, get 4 more cards. So you've seen an extra 5 cards on top of whatever you started your turn with, which means you have a good chance of seeing the cards you need on a turn.
Yeah, I think it. I like the inclusion of Skwovet with the Barrel engine. One thing that I think you were gonna mention, but you
Hmm.
look at Barrel versus Revavroom. Revavroom is
Yeah,
draw till 6. You need to discard an energy. And that does not from your hand though to use its ability, and that doesn't really work with Skwovet because if you Skwovet, you need to hit that energy. If you don't hit that energy, you can't
right.
use Revavroom. So that's part of why I think a lot of barrel engines, or maybe like half the barrel decks in the game, are choosing to run Skwovet. Obviously, it's low HP is kind of a liability, especially with Lost Zone being, and I
Yeah,
think still the best deck in format.
right. Been playing. Yeah, I mean, right. River, and I tried River Room even obviously without Skwovet with the Arcanine EX because you're Magna Base and getting the discard, and I just River Room just wasn't working anyway. I got to say, but yes, playing up against Lost Zone, having a 60 HP card on the bench, right? That's half one, right? The
Sableye. Yeah,
Sableye
which does
does
120.
120, so it's taking out that and what, and then is Manaphy 60 or it's 70,
Manaphy's
whatever,
70, but
or they're doing.
yeah, it just it's not great to have 60 HP right now.
Right, and I was playing it in the Oinkalone deck, and the Lechonk is at like 40 HP.
Lechonk, I don't think Lechonk's 40. I think it's more
No,
than that. I thought it was like 70. I'll check.
it's 60 or 70, so it's 70 probably.
Yeah.
Um, which is the worst attacker, but you probably want that, yeah. But even, they put 60 on Skwovet, they put 60 more on a man if you're playing that, which protects you from the Radiant Greninja and Lost Zone, or they put 60 out of the 120 out of a barrel. So, it hurts in that regard. But Lost Zone is just difficult, right? And Sableye, it just gives headaches, but they can't get that until they get 10 in the Lost Zone. So that's part of it too. You're hoping they can't. It's a bunch of turns where they can use Sableye's attack.
Yeah. But I definitely like it in that. But I think the more interesting combo is with
Hmm.
Altaria, which is a really interesting card. Stage one has a really powerful ability that says Tempting Tune. Once during a turn, you may search your deck for a support card, reveal it, and put it on top of your deck. And then, of course, you go ahead and you Skwovet, draw straight into that Altaria. Or that card you put into the supporter you drew, put on the top of your deck with Altaria, you draw into that, and you play it. This can be anything. It can be a research. It can be boss. But obviously, if you get a research, then you can just, it's kind of like a different version of a barrel.
Hmm.
When you compare it to just playing a research straight out or playing a barrel, obviously it automatically gets your hand down, so you're not like getting rid of any cards, which is really nice because
Hmm.
oftentimes you play like lots of research and then you have to research away some very important cards, which can cause you to lose the game. With Skwovet, you're saving your cards for later, which can be very, very important, and I think that's one of the better parts about it. But then, of course, the best part, in my opinion, is pairing it with Mustard, specifically Single Strike Mustard, that says you can only play it if it's the last card in your hand. Um,
Right.
but then you search your deck for a Single Strike Pokemon for Single Strike Mustard, and put it onto your bench, and then you draw 5 cards. Now, Rapid Strike Mustard goes from the discard pile, which is a bit more awkward to use in the
Hmm.
early game, but it's still playable. And I think it's really interesting with this combination that is relatively easy to set up. You need a stage one that is level ball searchable and a basic that's level ball searchable. And then you've got your insane engine set up, which draws 5 cards every turn, which is certainly fine. You do lose your hand, but you draw 5 more. And then at the
Hmm.
same time, you also get to put a very powerful Pokemon into play. Probably Beedrill, Cinderace. There are other options as well.
Yeah, I mean, it is good. I think it's more high roll than the barrel, I would say,
I
because
mean,
if you
yeah, but it's not
because with
that much
must
more.
well, you probably want to attack with the single strike Pokemon or rapid strike, but usually single strike, especially it's easier to work with. So that means you can't get it into play till turn two. Of course, assuming you're attacking with an evolution anyway, you can't attack till turn two the other way. But so
Yeah,
the
you can't
barrels,
attach to the Pokemon, the single strike Pokemon turn one.
right?
It's a bit awkward to use, but you do have the Altaria as a pivot, which is actually really nice.
Yeah.
Honestly, like I think Altaria Skwovet, even if you're not going for Mustard's worthwhile. And then we should probably talk about Brandon as well, which is a supporter that I don't think is super strong, but you could play it in this like Mustard's or this like Skwovet Altaria style deck. You can only
Mhm.
again use it if it's the last card in your hand. Draw a card for each bench Pokemon, both yours and your opponent. So actually I misread this last time that I saw it, but you can draw a solid chunk of cards. You're probably drawing maybe 7 cards. This is actually pretty good. That being said,
Mhm.
you probably rather like a research. Research is almost always going to be at least as good, if not better. But I think Brandon has some value.
There's a lot of decks that want big benches in the game, right? And then you may also. So there's a good number of chances you'll get more than research. So, and if you're playing it with Altaria, you could put in like at least one Brandon, right? And have the option of which one you put on top.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if it's really worth it. Obviously, it's only good once you set up, and also you'd probably rather just do you'd probably rather do a a mustard. I think obviously it's like a different type of thing, but I think you'd rather use a mustard.
Right. I mean, if you're in the case of just drawing cards like Brandon or Research, the barrel gets you a lot of the way there, so it might be the safer play. I think Altaria to get the mustard, you need that, that pinpoint card where it's the only one in hand. And mustard obviously fits that bill well. I haven't used Skwovet with Altaria at this point. I certainly will at some point. I've just started using it with the barrel, so which is a solid engine, right? I mean, you when this kind of set review was taking Skwovet as being the best card in the set. Is that right?
Oh yeah, of course. But
Of course. So,
um,
so for it to prove itself is that I know we're not competitive IRL players, but we probably need to see a viable competitive deck that's using Skwovet as part of its engine. We're not there yet,
oh
but
yeah,
but
I think we've
we
seen
may still get
we
there.
have seen in Arceus Giratina, which is a very strong deck, still one of the best decks in the game right now. Sometimes runs runs Skwovet. Any deck that runs Barrel sometimes runs Skwovet.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's going to become bigger though too, as people get used to it more. Right. Obviously, Lost Zone's still super strong. The whole Curly engine's strong, although Giratina with the stage two is just proving to be a little clunky. As you said at the start, although I think it's better than you give it credit for, but it still has its downside.
Yeah, which engine?
The Curlia with
Oh
going into the
yeah,
Gardevoirs being the stage two is kind of the sticking point for that
yeah.
deck, I
Oh,
think.
and the Gallade, I think the Gallade's very strong. I haven't been playing it, but I think it's super good.
Mhm. Yeah, there's some nice options there. But look, Skwovet's very good. Not so sure it's the best card in the set, but it's a very strong card paired with something else. I guess Bibarel Altaria. I'm not sure there's much else you'd want to pair it with, right?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, it's like an okay card in I think Control. I can't think of a specific like synergistic card though, off the top of my head. Like something
Yeah.
like Snorlax pre-rotation could have been good, but we don't have it
hmm
anymore.
I mean, there probably will be some other cards, a card or two that comes out in some later set that compare with Skwovet. So besides the current options, keep it in the back of your mind because I think it will have another partner at some point. I gotta imagine before it rotates.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely think so. But I think it's time to move on to our next segment. This is
Yep.
we're talking about some other cards, and this is based on card design because I enjoy talking about card design and looking at the unique designs of other cards. But today we're going to focus on some not like the top, the not the best of the best, but still some interesting cards that I think have some unique design aspects, and also not ones that are the most stand out because people like to look at like all the top cards, but they're talked about so much that there's more to say, but it's not as important as talking about some of the other cards. And people like to say that average cards and sets are just like generic and bad, and I think we're gonna look at some of those and talk about if that's like really true. So I just wanna
hmm
do you want to start us off?
Sure, I'll start things off. And we'll start off with Ursaluna, a stage two, which was in a Katie control deck that you had made a video on.
Yeah, which
I
is
don't,
for a like a challenge video, which
Gym Leader
is
Challenge.
yes, yes.
Yeah, that's not a deck that I think you'd push as a top tier deck.
I
But
think it has potential. I think it has potential.
so within that, you played the Ursaluna, a stage two, 180 HP. So it's a stage two, which that adds its clunkiness, but um, it and it does have bulky bump attack. Does 200 for 3 energy. You discard 2 energy from the Pokemon. Not what you used it for, and I'm not sure that you'd really want to
I
use
mean,
it
that's
for that.
okay. You compare it to oh, we'll talk about it some later, but
200 damage is meaningful. So I'm not saying you wouldn't use that. The reason in that deck was the Pete Hunt, and I think that's what's more interesting about it. The Pete Hunt, 1 energy, colorless. You put up to 2 cards from your discard pile into your hand. So a really nice recovery card. If it was a basic, it would certainly be busted. If it was a
yeah.
stage one, it would certainly be seeing play, I think. As a stage two, that's why it gets forgotten, I think.
Yeah, I think I want to talk about bulky bumps some though, because
Yep.
you were playing Oinkologne EX earlier today, right?
Yep. I am.
And its first attack obviously is it's the main reason you play it, but second attack is certainly very solid, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that
Yes.
does 210 for 3 on a stage 1 EX. So it gives up 2 prizes. Bulky Bump
Right.
is, and it also had a downside. I'm not sure which downside is worse. Was it Ursa Luna?
There's the Luna, I think.
Or,
Yeah.
or, um, or
Right.
Unclones.
Oink alone on a coin flip. You flip a coin. If tails, you can't attack the next turn,
Yeah.
which is definitely a negative.
Um, but I like Ursa Luna. I think 200 for 3 is it's not amazing, but I think it's certainly decent. And you look at its stat line as well. 180 HP
Yeah.
is like pretty tanky. It's obviously this isn't as strong as Oinkalone, but you could almost look at it like a mini Oinkalone. It's a stage
Right.
2, which is a major downside, but
Yeah.
it's it's definitely a card with like some solid stat line, I think.
Yeah. Doesn't have the an ability, so you can use the full face guard like with Oink alone. Now, the one thing we haven't mentioned that's a real negative, which I'm not sure why they made it so punitive, but the retreat cost is 4 energy, which is just kind of crazy.
I don't. I mean, it's like a big Pokemon. They usually, when they give big Pokemon like this, they give higher retreat costs. But I mean, it's not that bad of a thing. Like if it's your attacker, it being stuck in the active isn't bad. And you're just gonna play
Yeah.
switch, and you can of course like recover the switches as well.
Yeah. So and with bulky bump, you have obviously the first attack for 1 energy. Bulky bump can be a basic energy and a DTE. Probably was how you're paying for it. So
Yeah.
then you do 180. You discard the DTE. So then if you survive, you can just do another single attachment the next turn. So as an attacking option, it can work like that.
Yeah. But then with Pete Hunt, obviously, so some of you may know Sableye from Dark Explorers, which was a basic. For 1 Dark Energy, you recover 2 items from your discard pile into your hand. Now, that card was very good. Or it was in standard format, I think it was good. I don't know if it was like completely broken, but I think it was
Mhm.
strong. But then in expanding card format, it actually got banned, which is kind of strange. It was actually directly outclassed by another card, and they banned both cards at the same time. Maybe not directly outclassed, but generally outclassed.
Mhm.
So it got banned. But then that was obviously a basic. So that only recovered item cards, though. I think Ursa Luna here, being able to recover anything straight into your hand is very powerful. That being said,
Yeah.
obviously, it being a stage 2 is awkward, but honestly, stage 2s aren't that awkward to set up now because stuff like Kieran and Arvin being able to search on items like Solid and Peony also is solid, I think. So I think Ursa Luna.
Ursa
Um,
Luna, I think.
I always say Ursalana. It's Ursa Luna. Um, I think it's like a solid card, and then you can recover any 2 cards, and so you can recover a Gust card, and you can also recover like a Crushing Hammer or
Right.
something like that, and you have so much like versatility. I think it's a very strong card
Yeah, I
potentially.
mean, yeah, potentially right. Pete Hunt in a control type deck certainly is valuable. If you want to use the bulky bump attack, you'd obviously have a lot of other options to choose from. So how's it's a consideration. There may be better ones to do. But the game has slowed down, right? The EXs are well, there's more evolutions with some stage twos out there. The damage level is reduced, right? Less three prize Pokemon, so the games are taking another turn or two. So stage twos are certainly more of a consideration, which is a plus, I think.
Yeah, but obviously, and then we're supposed to be talking. I realize we've somehow sidetracked mostly off of card design. Um,
Okay.
but I think it's interesting though having 2 attacks that are seemingly not synergetic, which is kind of
Yeah.
weird. I think the idea of Pete Hunt, I don't know if it was exactly designed for this, but um, to me it looks like it's designed for you to trap your opponent's active and then recover cards and then like build up
Yeah.
a strong position in a control based deck. But then bulky bump
Hmm.
is like you never want to use it. You don't want to KO your active if you're trapping them. And Ursa Luna is never going to be able to sweep your opponent's whole board, even if you like build up. Like it's not doing massive amounts of damage and living hit after hit. Like you're just gonna I don't know. Bulky bump seems like a strange inclusion on this card.
Hmm.
It feels a little weird.
Yeah, I mean, you're almost never going to even knock out a V Pokemon. I guess with Choice Belt, you can,
Yeah.
but that's a lot of pieces, right? You've got to have the stage two. You get your 3 energies. One's probably DTE, so you're down to 180. Choice Belt gets to 210.
Yeah, I mean you do
Um,
KO like Luminion, which
so,
is solid.
Yeah, for the most part, though, it's not taking two prize. It's not one-shotting multi-prize Pokemon for the most part, right? At 180 is what you're normally hitting. So, but yeah, the recovery versus the attack, it's it's a strange combination, which I guess does make it interesting, right?
Yeah. One thing I want to say is that actually I believe in Pokemon's design philosophy.
Hmm.
We notice that a lot of people say single prizes are just like really bad. And in some senses they are. I believe Pokemon actually designed single prizes to be paired against other single prizes. So in their mind, I think they're thinking that Bulky Bump is like one shotting everything. And that
Uh,
Ursa Luna is not getting one shotted, but in reality, Bulky Bump isn't one shotting everything. It's one shotting some things, but not certainly not everything.
yeah,
And it's more importantly gonna get like one shotted all the time by pretty much not every deck in the game, but many decks have a solid ability to one shot it by following their main game plan. So
yeah.
I think, and as I said, I think Pokemon is not thinking about it like that, even though that's or they're trying to like they almost test the single prizes against single prizes, and
Hmm.
then the like V Maxes and V Stars and EXs against each other, and they're balanced in that way, which like kind of throws things off.
So the one thing I'll say, if that's the case, what they need to do in terms of alternate formats, which we've talked about, not going to dwell on here, if they think about single prizes versus single prizes, they should have a single prize only format in live,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
would say,
I
which
think
would
that
be a
would make
nice
sense.
plus. I think a lot of people would enjoy that if that was out there.
Yeah, I think it would be simple and it would be fun. That is in terms of alternate formats, that's pretty much the simplest they can go, but it's not bad at all. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that's, I think you covered enough ground there. Did you want to give it a score out of 40 like you do or no? By
No,
the way.
I need more time for that. I think.
Okay. We don't, you have all your four categories
No,
and
let's just do the out of
let's
four
not worry
stars.
about
Let's do
that.
out of 4 stars. I'll give it no. What do you think? Do you have an idea of out
Out
of?
of design wise, I'll
Yeah.
give it three stars. I think
Yeah.
it's
I
interesting,
I
got
think it's three
potential.
stars. Also, I think it's like solid. I think it's strong enough to be 3 stars as well.
Okay. Um, so should we go on to Sharpedo as the next card?
Sure. Let's talk about Sharpedo. So I think should I introduce this one? Do you want me
Sure.
to?
Why
Because
don't
by the way, I choose all these. I think I chose all these.
you might
Yeah,
have. I said one, and I think you crossed that one off the list when we are done.
yeah. I think it
Not that
was.
I'm bitter.
Yeah. Okay, so Sharpedo here is from Evolving Skies. This might be the oldest card we're looking at. And this one caught my attention when it came out, actually. So it has 120 HP, 1 HP cost. It's water type, lightning weak, no resistance, all normal stuff. As did stage 1. Its first attack, taunt. For 1 colorless, switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with their active Pokemon. And then for water colorless, Jet Bite. Does 120, and then during your next turn, this Pokemon can't attack. So, obviously, this card has not seen any play as far as I'm aware of, right?
Not that I know of. I mean, Jet Bite is just not very good, right? It's an evolution, 2 energy, 120. It would be pretty borderline if that's what it was. And then since you can't attack the next turn, I mean, you just don't want to attack with this period, right?
Yeah, I think the only way it could see play in standard format is gonna be with taunt, which honestly isn't awful. I believe we've seen this attack a number of times, in very similar effects. We've seen better versions of this though on
Hmm.
basics. But you could use this in the Zora control style deck to gust something and trap it. This is a
Yeah.
great way of doing it. It's not a great way, but it's an okay way of doing it, I think.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of where you throw it in. Obviously, it's a control card, probably Zor Arc as an option. It's a colorless energy, so it can get tossed in with whatever other cards you want in the deck. Um, but I think there's better options to do something like that probably anyway. So it's certainly not a card that I anticipate seeing a lot of play.
Yeah, and it's been out. It's been out for quite a while. But
Yeah.
you might remember when I told you that I wanted to include this card on this podcast. I said I had a special reason for it. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I didn't tell you what the reason was. Do you know what the reason was?
No.
Have you figured out? Guess. I'm making you putting you on the spot here.
Putting you on the spot. Was this the Sharpedo? Like, was it in a Zoroark deck of yours or in a
No,
GLC deck?
I've never played this card.
Okay, so well, I have no idea.
Okay, so as you and I have talked about, like personally, many times, Pokemon is not just not a card game, right? It's
Right.
a part of a bigger picture. Every Pokemon it's a Pokemon. It has various attributes, I guess
Yep.
personality type stuff, things like that. And so Sharpedo is obviously based on like a shark and like a torpedo. Um,
Hmm.
and so you see that obviously, I think the idea of what they were going for, and this is actually really interesting, is that they are trying to encapsulate that like idea of the Pokemon within a card, not just in terms of its attacks, like
Hmm.
boring stuff like oh it's fire type, it does like burn, but no, it has encapsulates the idea of the Pokemon. So what I think that they were trying to do here was they're trying to have it simulate like a shark like hunting down something, which I is kind of
Okay.
what they do. It taunts to like trap their prey, and then jet bite to just like destroy them. And then this again gets back to the fact that I think they're testing them against. They're like thinking about it as single fighters. They're like, wow, 120. That's just gonna obliterate them, which it doesn't. But I think
Right.
the idea is that you use taunt. You bring up some Pokemon, some like moderate Pokemon,
Hmm.
and then go in with jet bite and just obliterate it. The idea of like hunting down your prey, and I think that's what really like piqued my interest in this card.
Okay. I mean, obviously, if you can like gust up like the Barbaro from the engine or something, trading prize per prize and making your opponent's deck not function properly could have value. But, with multi-prizes, 120 is not enough. And I guess if the concept of a torpedo also, it blows up, so it can't be reused the next turn. Perhaps that's in Jet Bite also being not being able to attack again. Um, but it's a disappointing card to me, I would say.
Yeah, I think the idea of it is interesting, but obviously it's bad. Like it's a bad card. Um, I guess in terms of star rating though, I'll give it a four out of no, sorry, 2 out of 4. Because I think
Okay.
it's like I like the idea of it, and as I said, it's the card that when I was looking at cards, I don't know why I was looking at this card, but I was, and I might have been looking at it for Zora. Oh, I think we had a, oh no, we did use this. We had a thing where we drafted like sets, and then
Okay.
played only cards from that set. So this was a Zora control deck I played from Evolving Skies.
Okay. And I'm gonna give it a one. I think it's like a 1.5 star. So balance off your two with a one because this is kind of the card that's to a certain extent random jank that are a lot of cards in the deck, as people say. It's just a card that's probably never
In
gonna
the
see
set,
play.
and the
Right in the set.
yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
But I do think that it's important that Pokemon tries to get like the idea of the Pokemon in the in like a card, right? Because
Yeah.
I think that's like because it's Pokemon's both like a media franchise and like a card game, which are I guess the card game's part of the media franchise.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
I think it's very important that they put these ideas in.
Yeah. It's not just cards for the interactions of the card game. It can be approached that way, but it's functions on a lot of levels, which is meaningful to people. So I think yes, I would agree about that.
Yeah.
Um, shall we? I'm going to go introduce the next one if that's all right, and I'm going to go with a card from the same expansion and Rapid Strike Scroll of the Flying Dragon. This is a tool which can only be attached to a Rapid Strike Pokemon, or
It can be
or I
attached to
guess
it. Yeah.
I guess it could be attached to anything, but nothing that's but it can't use it unless it's a Rapid Strike Pokemon, right? The Rapid Strike Pokemon this card is attached to can use the attack on this card. You still need the necessary energy to use this attack. It gives the meteor attack for a fire lightning energy. Discard 2 energy from this Pokemon. This attack does 90 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. Um, so, if you compare it to something like what Radiant Greninja does already, now it's 3 energy, but that's to 2 Pokemon,
Yeah,
so
and it's probably
90.
easier to pay as well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're in a Lost Zone engine with Mirage Gate, you can power it up one turn, but I would think you have better options than trying to do this,
Yeah,
right?
like Radiant Greninja.
Exactly. So, I don't know. I mean, these scrolls, both rapid and single strike, are cards it's an interesting concept, right? With the battle styles that came out with these scrolls that they can use, but the hacks they gave them weren't particularly good, which again, this one falls in that category. 90 damage to one Pokemon for two, and you have to discard the energies too, because if you could have like a tanky Pokemon which obviously there's like VMAXs and such that could use this, do 90 to whatever you want, and then tank hits. But the fact that you're losing your energy each time isn't good, and also the rapid strike energy doesn't pay for this energy cost either, right? It's two, but it's fighting and water, right? If I
Yeah.
remember.
So it's just that's one of the weird things that like this is it just doesn't have synergy with the rapid strike package really in any way. I suppose you can use it. And that's the same typing. This is where you look at like typing stuff. So it has the
Hmm.
same typing as some of your favorite Pokemon, Blaziken and Zeraora.
Yeah,
Um, but like this is still bad, right?
it is. I'm trying to think. Are there any Yeah, Blaziken, Zeraora. Um, there's not like a dragon type that's rapid strike,
There
right?
there is. So this is actually this came out in Evolving Skies when Dragon type Pokemon were reprinted. And
Yeah.
do you know which one this was intended for? You should
I'm
know.
blanking.
It's
Well, is Rayquaza or is that a
Yeah, it's
single strike?
Rayquaza. No,
Okay, so
Duraludon's a single
Rayquaza.
strike.
Oh,
Rayquaza's the
okay.
rapid strike.
So I guess this is like an alternate attacker for Rayquaza, I guess.
Yeah,
But you probably just want to attack with Rayquaza because that's just better.
yeah. I think it's very clearly designed as an alternate attack in Rayquaza, which is like kind of weird. Of course, it does have like somewhat similar ideas. You are discarding energy just like the Rayquaza,
Yeah.
um, and you can power it up. You can Flaffy plus attach a fire. But that being said,
Hmm.
this is kind of weird. It doesn't have synergy in terms of attacking. It does cover a different aspect in terms of like sniping. 90
Yeah.
snipe could be worse. It does certainly KO Pokemon. A lot of some like set up Pokemon. Of course, this is as we said from Evolving Sky, so it's an older card in the current
Yeah.
stand format. It was at the same time as the Inteleon engine, which this KOs both the Sobble and the Drizzle. It also
Right.
KOs Ralts and Curlia, and KOs
Hmm.
and also of course KOs pretty much any evolving basic, such as Bidoof, any number of other
Hmm.
evolving basics as well.
Yeah. I mean, it one shots any level ball searchable Pokemon.
Yeah,
Is a way to think of it.
which isn't like the worst thing in the world, but I don't know. It's a bit of an underwhelming card, and it feels a bit strange. Again, not it's not an awful card, but I don't know. It misses the mark in my opinion, especially with its like, it's strange. Because when you look at a card like Rayquaza VMAX, right?
Hmm.
It's obviously it's a rapid strike card, but it doesn't really have
Yeah.
synergy in the rapid strike package, except for it is searchable with Octillery, so it does seem play in Sylveon, but it's Rayquaza is not really looked at as a rapid strike card.
No, it normally doesn't. Right, Sylveon Box, partly for the ability to discard and draw four, could, was something to try out, but you weren't getting the energy paid for that you needed particularly well. So, I mean, and Rayquaza was one that there was hype about, but was disappointing. So I guess if Rayquaza had become a viable deck, this would have been a tech in some of those decks, I suppose.
Yeah,
But since Rayquaza flopped, then this really just didn't have a place to belong.
yeah, I definitely think this is like, yeah, I don't know. One thing I don't like about this that I definitely don't like is that's intended for one specific thing, and I think
Hmm.
that's not generally a good idea. You want to give the players freedom to do what they want. Obviously, you can guide them in some direction, and Pokemon often does. We saw that Flaffy and Rayquaza very intentionally, came out in the same set to be used together. Um, but they didn't have to be used together, right? We've seen Flaffy in all
Hmm.
sorts of various decks, and in fact, we've seen Rayquaza not with Flaffy as well. So like, but this is really very much intended to be used with Rayquaza, and it's strange. I feel like it's a bit of a letdown.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, the scrolls were a bit of a flop across the board. This one probably at least as much as most, if not
Yeah, I
more.
think this was as I chose this. I think this very well may be the worst of the scrolls.
Yeah, I mean, as we were talking about it, actually, the single strike one to pair with Duraludon could be an option.
Yeah, and
But talking about
there are multiple single strike scrolls that could be paired with Drowdon.
so yeah, so this is you know, again, I think it's like a 1.5 star, I would
Yeah,
think.
I'd say it's like a one. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's. I give it somewhere around that as well.
Okay, I'll take the two. You can give it the one, and we get to 1.5 again.
Well, it's three.
Are we adding them up and now it's 3 out of 4? Is that the way you're doing math here?
Apparently, I don't know. I'm not sure where we're at.
Well,
Anyway, so what's the next card on your list?
shall we stay with the tools cards and
Yes.
everybody's favorite justified gloves? Um, unlike like this is a card that could get used with any Pokemon, which is one of the things of the tool, right? Usually a tool should be have a lot of things to pair with, right? The one exception was things the badges, but that was a special case, right? So
Yeah.
justified gloves, it's a whole series of gloves. I don't even remember what they are. Most people don't,
I
right?
think it's hunting gloves, weeding gloves, fire resistant gloves, crushing gloves, spongy gloves, cleansing gloves. Oh, I forgot. Obviously, justified gloves. I've forgotten something. I
That's
don't
just
remember.
just terrible. So there's a pair of gloves for each of the 8 types, right? So
Oh,
this one
digging
just
gloves and
you're
rubber
digging
gloves
gloves.
and rubber gloves. I forgot those.
So justified gloves. The attacks of the Pokemon this card is attached to do 30 more damage to your opponent's active dark Pokemon. So a way to do 30 more damage to one specific type, which I guess in theory has value. If you're really concerned about one particular matchup, you need that extra 30 damage, you could put this on. But this came out, was this right the set before Choice Belt came out?
No, this is a little. This is Chilling Reign, so it was. I mean, Chilling Reign was the second set of the year.
Okay.
Choice Belt came out like the beginning of the next year, so there was a bunch of time. But
All
oh,
right.
and I specifically chose Justified gloves because a few of the gloves, I believe, cleansing gloves and spongy gloves, have actually seen niche amounts of play, and they're the best ones.
Right.
And then certain other ones have just seen. Well, okay, all the rest have seen no play, but because they're like there's some that are just of the hit types are like really atrocious, like fire resistant gloves or weeding gloves. Like you don't ever want those because fire and grass are just really bad.
Yeah, I remember the spongy gloves, right, is a way to like knock out a starting
Yeah, you could.
Sobble or something with some little cheeky attack, right, for
Yeah,
30, and then you'd knock out the Sobble, I think, was
you
kind of
do.
the.
It was with Greed and VMAX. You'd like take extra prizes, and then
Okay.
you'd like KO Sobbles for like lots. You'd like it was really questionable.
It was, but it was played unlike this, which I mean, look, somebody tried it on something, but unless you have to be worried that like dark is your big problem, and you in 30 more damage fixes the matchup because you're not going to try. I mean, I guess you could have a bunch of different types of gloves in a deck, but that would probably just be even worse. So you would have to be so specific that it takes care of one opponent or one thing you're concerned about. So very just
Niche. Yeah.
yeah, niche, not very useful, or it might be, or maybe it's something you're hitting for weakness, but you're coming up short on a multi-prize Pokemon. Maybe then, but then if they're weak to you already, do you really need this in as the way to solve the problem?
Yeah, I feel like if you're hitting for weakness in a matchup and you're like losing, like that's like bad. Unless it's something like
Yeah.
really weird. But yeah, I definitely think Justified Gloves is like honestly all the gloves feel like weird. We actually saw Struggle Gloves. This is a really interesting card in my opinion, which has since rotated, but I believe it was in Darkness Ablaze, maybe not. But it has essentially the same
No.
effect, except it's when a type that hits you for weakness. So
Right.
it's more like versatile.
Yeah.
I don't know. Justified Gloves is so weird. As you said, like if it's a matchup, like a specific tech card, like 30 damage probably isn't gonna win you that matchup. Um, and it's useless the rest of the time. I really like. I really don't think this this card's very good. And I don't know. Like I don't know. I just it's just bad. It takes up too much deck space if you need it, and you don't really need it ever. Um, as you said, you compare it to Choice Belt. Choice Belt is so much better. Obviously, it does 30 more to
Hmm.
fees. But then this is just one of the like they're very strange cards.
Yeah, I mean they really are. I guess if you're we're to go into one particular tournament at one point in time, and you're really and there's a very dominant deck. Um, you might think this works for a deck for one tournament, perhaps.
Yeah.
That's the most use I could ever see it getting, but I'm not sure it was ever seriously played at all. I don't think so.
Yeah, and I guess with these cards, you need to look at what like the context is. And this is
Hmm.
actually kind of interesting. We saw Eternus V Max as a dominant dark deck. We
Right.
also got Galarian Moltres V coming out in the same set as this card.
Hmm.
That being said, like I don't know, there was also the weakness triangle, the dark fighting psychic weakness triangle. But
Hmm.
like if you're playing Shadow Rider and you're up against Eternus, you're still gonna lose. So this, I don't know. To me, this is a 0 out of 4 card.
Well, I'm going to give it at least one in that I think the fact that they put out all eight together so you could choose what you
Yeah,
wanted, I'll,
they
I'll
weren't
give
in the
it
same
one.
set, by the way. But
Oh,
you
they
knew that.
weren't. They were
But
spread out some.
um,
No, I didn't know that.
yeah, they were. Were they spread out through the whole year? Let's see. Yeah, they were spread out through. Whoa, they were spread out. No, okay. They started in Chilling Reign with
Hmm.
Yeah, they started in Chilling Reign, went all the way to Brilliant Stars.
Okay.
So it was a whole year
Yeah.
and
So,
multiple blocks.
which that part's odd. I will say for sure. Um. So look, but I still think, in a sense, they're meant to be taken as a whole, right? So giving people those choices isn't terrible. So I'll give it one star. But
Yeah. Uh-huh. I know they're weird cards. We make fun of them, like because it was every new set you'd see new gloves, then we'd make fun of them, like so.
yeah, I mean, yes, I mean these really, yeah. Just there's not much good to say about it. I will agree with you on that. I think we're agreed about that.
Yeah,
You want to introduce another card for us?
sure. So I'll talk about. Hopefully you don't have a certain order you want us to go in because I'm not necessarily following that. Um,
No.
so we'll talk about actually probably the best card and the only new card on this list, Cyclizar, from of course Scarlet and Violet. This one actually Scarlet and Violet. Number 164. There's a different Cyclizar that's worse from this set. This one has 110 HP, colorless, free retreat. Its
Yeah.
first attack, Touring, draw 2 cards. Second attack, speed attack. Oh, sorry, Touring is 1 colorless. Speed attack for 3 colorless does 100. Fighting weak,
Yeah.
no resistance. Yeah. So, like, what are your thoughts? I actually got you to play this card in a deck, and it's an interesting card.
Yeah, I had it in a deck and I got rid of it, but it's definitely a playable card, right? It's a pivot card which gives some value, but that's not enough reason on its own. 110 on a basic is good, right? Obviously you can't search it with level ball, but it's not get. I mean, and it does get knocked out by Cramorant and Sableye, but like the Sableye only has 10 extra to spread, so 110's a good number.
It's
I
an
think.
okay number. I think it's like we've definitely see 120, 130, and if you hit 130, I think you're in a noticeably better position. But I've seen 110 is much better than like I think 110 for a non-evolving basic's a bit underwhelming.
Yeah, I mean that could be, and obviously 120 would be a big deal just to get it out of the Cramorant range, which you see early. But the fact that it's free retreat in the first attack, the sec speed attack for 3 isn't, I don't think you're going to want to be doing that. But touring for 1 colorless energy, you can drop it in any deck you want and draw 2 cards. It's an option. It gives you the pivot if you have a card that you need to be accelerating to the bench, which you need to do with a Flaffy electric generator with Magna Basin. So it could fit in a deck like that. And at times when things aren't working, just drawing 2 has value, right?
Yeah, I think it's not a great card, but I think we've seen this actually. It's similar to Tapu Koko from Darkness Ablaze. It's almost the same as that card actually. Um, is that the right set? I think that's the right set. And that actually saw play as a pivot because there's a time when people are just like, we need a pivot in every deck.
Right.
And then people just like started throwing like random Pokemon into the decks. And in the Tapu Koko, very similar to Cyclizar, actually saw a solid chunk of play. Um,
Yeah.
and so I think this Cyclizar is like interesting. And I think Pokemon was modeling Cyclizar after that Tapu Koko.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, it's kind of interesting. Obviously, it's kind of meant to be speedy. I honestly, if from like because you played Pokemon Scarlet, and so have I. And Cyclizar is
Hmm.
obviously a very fast Pokemon.
Yeah.
So that's like the free retreat, the draw 2 cards. I think speed attack's like weird though. That's in no way fast. So again, like modeling the idea of the Pokemon, like it's not
Yeah.
fast. It doesn't have anything that makes it like seem fast. I guess you could put a double turbo, but it's still 2 attachments. So
Right.
I don't really know what's going on with that, but yeah,
Yeah. If they want a speed attack, you should be able to play it and attack with it the turn you put it on the board, right?
yeah,
And you can do touring attack, but that's not doesn't have speed in the name, so that part doesn't make so much sense.
yeah. I
But
think it's that you're like seeing, like you're touring different like locations and you're like seeing more stuff. So you like see more cards, maybe.
Mhm.
It's
And
kind of weird.
I guess so. And touring, right? You're on like a your motorcycle tour going around the countryside, and that's kind of what you're doing, I guess. Just checking out the scenery. And I guess in a sense you're checking out the scenery because you're not taking any prizes, right? You're not advancing your win condition. So
Yeah,
I suppose
yeah,
I'm not sure. Um, so it relates a little bit to the Pokemon. It certainly is. It's a card that's can be playable, right? It's one to keep in mind. Um, it's an option for decks.
yeah. And I think this is probably like the best. It's the most like easy to play Pokemon or card that we're looking at today, other than Skwovet. Obviously, Skwovet's like better than this, but
Right.
yeah, I think this is to me. I'll give this like I'm still gonna give this a 2 out of 4. I think it's the best in terms of playability,
Hmm.
but it's a bit boring still.
I'll give it a 3 because I think it's a solid. It's a consideration at least, and I like cards that are considerations. That don't that and honestly most of the time you're going to say no to it, but that's okay, right? There's a lot of cards. Most of the cards shouldn't be particularly good, and but at least they should be worth thinking about, and that falls in that category for me.
Maybe I think like it's. I think it might be a bit too weak.
Okay.
Like it has potential to see play because it like fills a vacuum of something that not
Hmm.
many cards do. But it's still inherently it's not a particularly good card either. In fact, inherently that's a bad card.
It's not a it's an, I no I don't agree. It's not a bad card. It is a bit generic, but touring
But you never
is a
want to use
useful
it. It's
attack.
not like good to use. It's like I've essentially lost the game, but I'll
Well,
use this usually.
Well, hopefully you're not losing the game, but obviously it's a deck that you need a pivot card, which obviously it's a consideration for. And if you can't do anything else that turn, you're drawing 2 cards, which is a plus still, right? Hopefully you're using the attack early in the game, not late in the game.
Yeah, but I feel like it's usually like, oh, I haven't set up because usually you want your energy on your like attacker. So
That's true. I mean, it's like Tapu Koko, which saw some play, and occasionally you use the attack, but you didn't want to use the attack, right?
yeah,
So, how high or not you rate it, it's I mean, I guess it's a 2. It's is what I'll say from my standpoint.
yeah. And then I think it's time we move on to a different. I'll move on to the last basic Pokemon we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
That being Mawile from Battles. Oh, this is the oldest card we're talking about. Mawile from Battle Styles.
Yep.
A single strike Pokemon. And this was obviously one of the first single strike Pokemon coming out in Battle Styles with 2 attacks, 90 HP, Fire Weak Grass Resistance, 1 Retreat. Its first attack for 1 Metal, Powerful Vice, 20 Flip Coin if heads the defending your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. And then a Piercing Strike for 100 for 3. This attack isn't affected by weakness, resistance, or any effects on your opponent's active Pokemon. So this is kind of a weird card, I think.
It is. I mean, it's not a particularly good card. Single strike Pokemon were supposed to be the big hitters. This is certainly not that. Piercing Strike, I guess, hey, we can use that to solve the Flying Pikachu problem. All you gotta do is get 3 energy on, like, a whole lot of turns in a row, and you can win the game, right? As you get 1 shot each time. But I don't know what the point of Piercing Strike is. Do you really need to hit through effects on abilities with this card?
I think
Not really.
Piercing Strike is there as it's a thematic one in terms of the fact that Single Strike obviously has the idea of doing big damage, but then we've also seen the effect of hitting through effects numerous times in Single Strike. We saw it with Single Strike Urshifu VMAX.
Yeah.
We saw it with Drowlodon VMAX. We've seen it with there's a Scroll of Piercing as well,
Yeah.
which has the same effect. So I think that's the idea here, as this like
Okay.
soft secondary mechanic Kind of like how Rapid Strike's main mechanic is like spread, I guess, and the secondary mechanic is like switching or something.
Hmm.
But Mawile encapsulates that secondary effect,
Okay,
I
fair enough.
guess. And then also, of course, is colorless. So the single strike types are dark and fighting. So you can, of course, use any energy on piercing strike, including single strike energy. So I
Right.
think this is Mawile's secondary attack is meant to embody the single strike element of the card.
Okay. Right. And if you get three single strike energies, you're doing 160. But again, for all the work that takes, that's certainly underwhelming there. Powerful Vice for 20. Now it's a metal energy, which isn't what you really want with single strike for the most part. But doing 20 obviously isn't much. Paralyzing is very powerful effect, though. If they can't get out of it, they can't do anything the next turn. Not a coin flip.
We do
I
have
mean, it
Glimmer
has.
Tangle.
Yeah, and if it was paralyzed for one energy without a coin flip, I think that would be too powerful, right? It would be too much of an option just to toss in a lot of decks. So I think the coin flip is appropriate for paralysis because paralysis obviously is much worse than confused, right? They can't retreat out, they can't do
Yeah,
anything unless they can evolve or switch.
yeah,
Um, so so the first one is okay, but obviously you're kind of flipping your coin and hoping. And then you're doing that, I guess, while you're setting up a bench to do something better the next turn. I guess you can see some use that way.
yeah. I think to me, in terms of card design, Powerful Vice represents the obviously like the idea of Mawile. We've seen various attacks like this
Hmm.
before in Mawile, where it's like paralysis or just energy disruption, and the idea of like again like trapping your opponent with its mouth on its head. I don't really know what Mawile is. I've seen some stuff. It's a very strange Pokemon, but I think the idea of the first attack is to get the idea of Mawile across, where you're
Hmm.
trapping something, you're paralyzing it. Um, and then it could be again a similar idea to Sharpedo, where you then you paralyze and then you piercing strike to like punish your prey. But I think it's actually the first attack is there to represent Mawile, and the second attack
Hmm.
there is there to represent the single strike mechanic.
Okay, that could be. I mean, because there is the Mawile that was played in the one Lost Zone deck to stop retreating, which obviously is similar in some ways to paralysis.
Yeah, and also it and we see this other Mawile which also does something similar. But the Mawile, the one that sees playing the Lost Zone deck, also with its attack tempting trap for one color, says the defending Pokemon can't retreat next turn, and also it takes 90 more damage
Right.
on your next turn. So this is the same idea of trapping something, and then you get to then you're like punishing your prey. And we even see that idea in the V Star with its like gusting. So I think
Hmm.
that's the idea of trapping your prey. Again, similar to Sharpedo, I think it's actually implemented more so across a wide variety of Mawile cards. And I think
Okay.
that's the first attack. Although that first attack obviously doesn't have any synergy really with it. Single strike. I can't think of any other like metal single strike cards. I get
Um,
Duraludon, I
right,
guess,
Duraludon is
but
right is the one that comes to
yeah,
mind,
which
and
isn't a
obviously
metal,
because
but it has metal in its attack cost.
metal and fighting, right? And obviously, yeah, the fighting single strike energy pays for the metal. Um, Single strike energy does not. It has whatever the other secondary single strike energy that covers all types. But
Hmm.
um, yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of synergy between the two attacks, I would say, right? To me, the piercing strike's a pretty underwhelming attack. Um, I guess you could powerful vice paralyze them until you get to the point you could knock them out. But your piercing strike is a very in terms of just the attack is pretty underwhelming for three energy for 100. Not loving that. Even if it does have some relationship to the single strike um,
Yeah.
design.
Hmm. But overall, in terms of stars, I guess I
Yeah.
give it. I'd honestly give this a 2 out of 4.
Hmm.
It's still underwhelming, but it gives you something to think about, and I think they Pokemon at least clearly somewhat gave thought into this card.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a 2 out of 4. It has a relationship to other Mawiles, a relationship to the single strike um, battle style, and at least the first attack in terms of gameplay gives consideration, especially when Glimwood Tangle was in the game.
Yeah. Still probably not a card you'd play in anything. I remember there's this like weird
No.
alternate format I was considering it for, but yeah, no.
All right, so we're getting towards the end here, so why don't we jump to Torracat? So hitting that fire Pokemon for weakness here. Stage 1,
The
80
metal
HP.
Pokemon for weakness.
I mean, the metal
With
Pokemon
fire.
for weakness. It is a fire type. Yep,
Yeah.
thank you.
Although there's jumping out a water tank in this image, which is questionable.
Yes, it is trying to attack the
Lud. Oh, what is it?
Love Disc or something.
Love is it? Yeah, is it Love Disc? How do you
It
say
might
it?
be.
Yeah, Love Disc.
I think it's LUV, right? Is that correct?
Yeah,
Love
Love Disc,
I think. So you're right. Tora cat going after the fish, which is natural, but obviously if it got itself in the fish tank, in the water, it would not be good for it, right?
Die. No, I
So
don't know if it would
80.
die.
I'm not sure. It's 80 HP, so very low HP for a stage 1 Pokemon. Has 2 attacks, Gritty Claws for 2 fire, 40 damage during your opponent's next turn. If this Pokemon has full HP and will be knocked out by damage from an attack, it is not knocked out, and its remaining HP becomes 10. So that's really the main use for the Pokemon. It's got Combustion for 3 energy, and you
All
get
fire as well.
all fire, and when you get 3 energy on a stage 1, you get the 70 damages, which is exactly what you're hoping for in a situation like that, right?
Yeah. Let's say, do I do 200 damage and accelerate 3 energy when you could just do 70?
Yeah, I mean that joke's just. I mean, it's just a joke of an attack, right? Combustion is a fire type. Okay, I get that, but
Well, it actually does have use, but we'll get to that later.
okay. But as a
Minor
general
use.
attack, it's not what you want. It's the Gritty Claws, right? You have to attack with it, right, for the secondary part to kick in. That if it's full HP and it's not would be knocked out by damage, it's not knocked out and HP becomes 10. So that's really the usefulness of it. It's a Pokemon that can tank in that regard, a second turn at least. You have to attack for this to count. It's not just an ability, so it's not like you could have it in the active and share away the energy and not attack the next turn and kind of just keep it sitting there. You have to get 2 fire on each turn without damage to do it. I guess you could build a Magna Basin, Armor Rouge, Cheryl deck
Yeah.
and just hit 40 indefinitely, but I don't think that's going to go
No, but
very
then,
far.
wait, did you not look at the card I told you to look at before?
No, I did not.
Never
What was
mind, never
that?
mind. We'll get to it in a second. It's whatever.
All right,
Whatever.
you let us know.
The one thing, obviously, you can't Magma Mason to Torracat because then it will not have full HP, and then
Right.
the effect will not happen.
Yes.
Which is obviously that takes away the whole point of the attack.
Oh no, you can play Radiant Serena in the deck too. Then Magna Basin, Radiant Serena, heal it off.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Oh no,
All right, go ahead.
yeah, you do that. No, so
No.
okay, the card you're supposed to look at is this is a stage 1 Torracat, which we're all into Incineroar, right? So there's
Okay.
an Incineroar from that set, which I told you to look at, and then
Yeah,
I was
you
talking
told
to
me
you
in
earlier, and you're like,
passing.
huh? And then yeah,
I was doing something else
So
at the
look
time.
at that
Okay.
card. Look at that card and read it out for everyone. Incineroar from Silver Tempest. And
All
actually,
right, which is the next card deck in the Silver Tempest set. So this is what it evolves into. So Incineroar 170 HP for a stage 2. That's a much healthier number. So it's got 2 attacks. So this is not the one you care about. I'll say it first. Flare Shot does 180 for 2 and discard all energy from this Pokemon. So
Not too
not
bad.
bad. No, it's not bad. But then Secret Attack, choose an attack from one of this Pokemon's previous evolutions and use this as an attack. So I guess.
oh, and do you also have the Litten pulled up, or should I read it?
Why don't you read it off? I don't have it here.
Litten, the basic, with its sack reprisal, it does for 2 fire. For 1 fire it does 10, but for 2 fire you do 20 for each damage counter on this Pokemon. Obviously, Litten having 70 HP. If you somehow have 60 damage counters on you, you can go ahead and you can hit for 120, which isn't awful, but it's hard to pull off. But then if you have the whole idea with this thing, let's say you go ahead and use Incineroar, Secret Attack to copy the Torracat. You do some damage, 40, not a ton. But then they hit into you, they obviously can't KO you because that's literally the whole effect of the attack.
Right.
And then now you have 160 damage damage on you. And you do
Right.
Litten and you copy Reprisal, and then all of a sudden you hit 300. What was it? You had 160, so you hit 320 damage, KOing
Yeah.
essentially everything. Torcat's attack plus Litten's attack, copied by Incineroar, will KO anything, assuming no like weird stuff.
Okay. Yeah. So it's like, right, the Empoleon from the theme deck that copies stage two that copies the previous attacks. So you just need one energy, which is quite nice. So you know, wow. I mean, wow, getting this set up though and making it work certainly seems problematic. But that's kind of, you have a stage two, and now you want to have the basic stage one and the stage two, so you're having to evolve turn by turn.
No rare
Rare,
candy.
no rare candy. So, but look, it's a nice. I appreciate options like that. Is what I'll say. I don't think it's going to be very good, but it's interesting, I
Yeah, I
guess.
remember you and I both we talked about this in the 3 hour long Silver Tempest set review we did back in the day.
Okay. All right. I've blocked that out of my memory,
Yeah,
but
go check that out if you want to watch something really, really. If you think the podcast is too exciting, go check that video out on my channel. 10 types, subscribe.
it's on. That's right. It's on yours. I don't. I participated, but it's not on my channel. So I mean, I guess with this, in terms of card design, we're having to consider the package of all three cards, right? Not just the Torracat.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, so obviously it's a fire Pokemon. They have the little fire and what, like all of these attacks, all of on all the Pokemon, I think.
Wait, what?
They have like combustion. It's flare shot, so getting the fire theme there. And naming it secret attack to copy an earlier attack, that's not bad because that's what's one of the cards that's covered up. Um, so gritty claws, cats got their claws. It's gritty because it doesn't get knocked out. Um, I think it's a nice idea, is what I'll say.
Yeah,
Probably not very successful to play, but that doesn't mean it's not a good card design. And cards like this in sets, I think, are a good thing.
yeah. And this card is, I think, unlike other single prizes. I was saying that they were designed based on single prizes. This one is not. This one's definitely designed to be able to take out big like V Maxes, V Stars, because it can. Like secret attack, copying, reprisal will one shot V Stars, and probably a lot of V Max as well. One issue is some things can hit through this. Too many things, unfortunately, for this card. And of course, as you said, it's like so awkward to set up. But I think this is like a really cool design card. I think the one thing I don't like, though, is obviously the idea of secret attack. It's to copy the previous evolutions. But then you compare this to the Empoleon. So tell us about the Empoleon a little. Or
Right,
if you forgot, I can tell.
I mean, it copies the attacks. I'm trying to think now. It has its own attack that's also useful, which also discards its
Yeah,
energy,
it's pretty
right?
much the same thing.
I
By the
think
way,
that one did 130. This does 180.
yeah, Empoleon was obviously older. It was Cosmic Eclipse, but then there was also colorless attack cost, which is nice.
Now the attacks you could copy. One of them hit the bench, right? Did it do 100 to the bench?
Yeah,
I'm
100
trying to
snipe to the
remember
bench,
now.
and you discard energy attached to
Right.
that Pokemon
I mean, it only cost one energy to do
to
that. So,
copy.
but
Yeah.
the copy one, right? You wanted to use it from the stage two. I think that was on the stage one. I think it was multiple energy on the stage
Yeah,
one.
3 water on the stage one.
So you didn't want to do that. You wanted to copy it from the stage two. So it was a very useful attack. And then the other on the basic hit into it did something extra if it hit into a basic. Was
Yeah,
that
it did
correct?
80 damage, and if it was a basic, they couldn't attack next turn. So
So that was a more interesting set of things, being able to hit the bench or being able to stop your opponent's Pokemon from attacking the next turn. I think. I mean, this is interesting too. I think this is more complicated because you've got to kind of stream the attacks together, and your opponent has to cooperate, right? They have to hit into you and not knock you out. Whereas,
I
like,
mean, they
yes,
won't knock you out unless they have something like VMAX Drell on VMAX, which then they can knock you out.
Well, I mean, if you're looking to take a knockout on a multi-prize Pokemon, yes,
Yeah.
correct. And obviously at the time there was goons and things like that, or the intelligent engine was still around. So if they pinged you
Oh yeah,
with something
that
like
was
that,
bad.
you're knocked out. Also, that was probably the bigger issue, right, at the time.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, also combustion. I said I was going to mention that. Secret attack can copy combustion. Doing 70 for one on a stage two, it's not great by any means, but it's okay. It covers something that the other attacks do not cover as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly times that would be your best option for the attack.
Yeah.
Um, Although, again, if you have to use gritty claws to be protected from being knocked out the next
Yeah.
turn, it's not an ability. So you probably even then would rather do 40 if you're not damaged to not be knocked out the next turn.
Yeah. Gritty claws is very good, but I think there might be very specific times when combustion could be better.
Hmm.
Especially if you need to take like an important KO.
Right, to get the KO, or if your opponent's damaged you, then right, you don't have much choice. Now you could Cheryl, of
Like,
course.
and you could also, yeah. So one of the things, if they hit into you, you could just use reprisal. Like if they did like 40 damage to you, reprisal is not doing more than combustion.
Right.
But then yeah, you could Cheryl. You can literally, one thing you can do is you can gritty claws Cheryl every turn. Um,
Yeah.
and then now you are actually only doing it for one energy, and that's a
Hmm.
semi-viable strategy. Obviously, 40 per turn isn't great. I think you could put in Defiance Band or Choice Belt to be hitting 70 every turn with Gritty Claws. A secret
Right.
attack having Gritty Claws. So I think it's like, it's interesting. But I don't like that you really it's intended to go one way. You're intended to gritty claws into reprisal. Unlike Empoleon, where you had different options, you had considerations. This is
Hmm.
not really a toolbox deck. It has various elements of one, but at the end of the day, I'd compare it to honestly. I'd say it's a bad version of Mew VMAX, like a really
Uh,
bad version of Mew VMAX.
yeah, because obviously you take away the Genesect engine too, besides the attacking on it. But it is interesting. Um, it's going to be difficult to pull off. Is it give you enough bang for the effort? Probably not. It is intriguing to think about, though. I will say, it's more interesting than most cards, though. Probably, right? For some,
Yeah,
it's if I don't know if we looked at all the ranked all the cards in Silver Templates for interest, these are probably in the top 25%. I would think
I mean
because
easily,
of what.
easily.
So
There are a lot of
so
like
that's
boring ones. But then
yeah.
I think this is a 4 out of 4 for me. I guess not like an amazing 4 out of 4, but I think it's a very interestingly designed card.
Mhm.
Even though it's a bit underwhelming in terms of like power level and it's awkward to use, I think it's a cool card.
Okay, and I'll give it a 3 out of 4. It could be a 4 out of 4. It's right around there, that area. It's a very nice set of cards, right? Obviously, taken of itself, it would be a lot lower.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And then I think it's time to move on to our last card.
Yes.
An interesting one that actually is in one of the starter decks. We have Kingdra from Lost Origin with its ability. First of all, its attack. It does 150 HP, water type, stage 2, lightning weak,
Hmm.
retreat cost of 1. For watercolorless, you can do Hydro Splash 130, pretty generic.
Yep.
And it's actually very interesting ability. Seething Current. Once during your turn, you may have either player shuffle their hand and put it on the bottom of their deck. If that player put any cards on the bottom of their deck in this way, they draw 4 cards. This is essentially a Marnie for one player, a judge for one player.
Yeah.
And obviously, the idea is that generally you can have it as an edging card for yourself, but you can also have powerful disrupt or moderately strong disruption on your opponent at the same time, or not at the same time, but with the
Hmm.
same card.
Right. It's in the Palkia starter deck. Is that correct? If I remember right.
Yeah, with the other Kingdra.
Right. Which I think we need want to talk about that some too because they both evolve some Seadra. But it is a nice card in that deck. Most of the time, I found you want to use the 4 to draw for yourself to try to get some new cards, but the disruption for your opponents, it's a nice option for sure. So that ability is good. I think the fact it's on a stage 2 is appropriate, right? I think on a stage 1, it's too good of an ability. So the difficulty of a stage 2, I think, makes it balanced. Hydro Splash attack 130 for 2, generic there,
Yeah,
but
it's not. I'd say it's bad, but it's not the worst.
Right. I mean, you want it there for the ability. If you need to attack with it at some point in the game, it's not the worst thing, is kind of the way I would look at it. But then you have the other Kingdra also. And were they in? No, they're in different sets. But
Battle style is this one.
which is from the E block, the one we're talking about is from the F block. But obviously, right now, you may want to play both, like the starter deck does, and that has the Deep Sea King ability. When your active is knocked out, you move it in energy from it from an attack from your opponent's Pokemon. So there may be conditions where that doesn't get fulfilled, but you move an energy, water energy, may move any amount of water energy from that Pokemon to this. That's right. It's as much energy as you want. So, and then its Aqua Burst does 40 damage per water energy attached. So it's a nice comeback attacker in a deck too. So the fact that you have the option of the two Kingdras, it's a nice. It makes this Kingdra better.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. As you said, these are very different when they came out. The Kingdra with the attacking Kingdra
Yeah.
came out at the beginning of the E block, so it's barely survived rotation. Versus the other
Yeah.
Kingdra is a relatively new card, near the end of the F block, so
Right.
significantly over a year later. Um, but to me, like obviously the attacking Kingdra, you can all use that in a water based deck. This other Kingdra though, I think is a solid engine piece.
hmm
And you can obviously get it up relatively easy with Irida.
Yeah, you get the Pokemon, you can get rare candy to get it evolved in one turn if that's what you want. I will bring up here in terms of card design the fact that obviously the cards are based on Pokemon and they get repeated time and time again, and you get multiple copies, multiple versions of the same card playable at a time. It is interesting. I think that's a design element, big picture, and makes things more interesting, right? You have two Kingdras that you can put into the same deck potentially if you want. That just makes the game a little more interesting in general.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah, and I was looking if there are multiple Sharpedos, and there aren't. Oh, there are. This other one's bad. So, and it's just completely different. It does 70 for 2 for dark colorless on a stage 1.
Okay. Whereas obviously with a Kingdra, there is value in having them both in the same deck. Might not be what you want to do, but certainly it's not it's a consideration if you're putting this Kingdra in to have
Yeah.
the other one. Now
Oh,
for its ability,
sorry.
go
One
ahead.
more thing about the fact that there are two. Interestingly, if you're familiar, I'd recommend you actually play the Palkia starter deck if you have not. It's kind of bad, but it's kind of interesting to see how it works.
hmm
And also, really interestingly, so Seadra, which obviously evolves into Kingdra, has the attack Swim Freely, but only the newer one, the one from Lost Origin. But then this allows you to accelerate water energy to it with Finneon, which has synergy with the older Kingdra. So we see that the older Kingdra has synergy with the new Seadra, giving it more options, which is interesting. It's the same thing you were saying, but I think I agree that it is very cool.
Yeah, I think it makes the game more interesting. And I do think that the designers of the cards, they take a lot of care with things, and they're aware of these things. And you get these synergies for a time period, and they go away, and it's part of what makes the game interesting. And cards like this, it's an option for a deck. It's not the greatest card, it's not going to make the most powerful deck, but having these type of options and pulling things together makes the game as a whole a lot more fun and interesting.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really unique card. And also in terms of this is another design aspect that we haven't even talked about much at all. Although we have talked about a few disruption-based cards. In fact,
hmm
Ursaluna, Sharpedo, Mawile, and Torcat all have disruption elements.
Yeah.
But Kingdra has very clear disruption elements, very direct disruption elements. And I
Yep.
think all these cards have actually balanced disruption in a really nice way where it doesn't feel too oppressive. One of the interesting things about Pokemon is control. And does Pokemon actually design control specifically to be in the game, which is really weird because
hmm
in some ways they very much do. As we've seen Pokemon such as Sableye or Rangu with attacks, they're very much control-based attacks. Or even like Durant, right? Durant Mill. It's not
Yeah.
exactly control. That's
But it's
obviously
similar,
kind of
right? It's
it's an
stopping
alternate
you from
one.
playing the game.
Yeah. And stuff like Galarmine, right? I don't think when Pokemon printed Galarmine,
Right.
they're like, this is only for Leafeon VMAX a year later. They were definitely thinking control. So
hmm
And some people find this very toxic to play against, very understandably, because it's not the most fun, especially if you just can't do anything all game. But I think this element of disruption is very like fair. Forcing your opponent to draw only 4 cards isn't that bad for them, but it can hurt them a lot as well. So I think it's very balanced.
Yeah, and in this case, you have the option of helping yourself or hurting your opponent, right? Depending on the situation. So I think that's a nice element to it. In the control aspect, Pokemon, I think they want it to a limited extent, but not too much, because obviously you see in expanded where things get to be a problem. That's where they'll ban the control cards, right? Because it can be overwhelming. So I think they want control
Yeah.
as a niche aspect that a few people play, but I don't think they'd be happy if like 25% of the people are walking into an event with control decks either.
Yeah, I think like when you look at control of the bands and expanded, I think probably 95% of the bans are control cards.
Yeah, that seems to what I would say. It's along those lines. Just because, and obviously control with like all the extra choices becomes very powerful. But what they do, obviously the card designers like control as an option because there are cards that get put out that clearly have control as their main focus. So Pokemon, people don't like control, but they like it. Pokemon likes it to an extent, and people do like control some also, right? Everybody's interested to see what Sanders' latest deck is. Them, right? You don't want to run into it necessarily, but everybody wants to know what he's been up to.
Yeah, I think there are definitely some like weird, unique cards that like see playing control that aren't necessarily like considered good cards, but like the Ursa, what's it, Ursa Luna V? I actually saw
Yeah.
it play in the recent control deck, which is interesting, right? But I think that we need to give it a star rating. I think this is easily like the coolest card we looked at. I think it's a 4. I think it like hits the right boxes.
Mm. I was gonna give it a 3. I'll stick with a 3. It could be a 4 though. Also, it's yeah, I'll give it a 4. The fact that you can choose which way to go with it, and it's useful both way, but it's not overpowering either way. I'll give it a 4.
Yeah, I think that's the depth in terms of competitive viability. I think it's like the most competitively viable out of these cards, in my opinion. I think it actually deserves some competitive play right now, because I think it's like a powerful card. But at the same time, of course, it's like it's a unique card. It's interesting. It doesn't have the depth in terms of like attacks or anything, but
Right.
it's cool. And the synergy with the other characters is cool.
It's a card to keep in mind too because it's a stage 2 that makes it slow. As we're getting away from the V maxes and such, the game's I think going to slow down. So it may have more value in the future, right? Once the next rotation happens, it may be even a stronger card than it is now.
Yeah, and as we said, the synergy with the Irida, I think, is very strong as well.
Yeah, and that's also the F block, right? That sticks around.
Yeah, it was the set before Kingdra. I
Yeah,
imagine
well,
Kingdra was designed with the Irida in mind.
yeah, because Irida came out with Palkia, right? And that's a V star, which then so it has to be an F block.
Yep.
Just going through my logic. Okay, so I think we covered enough ground here. Do you want to
Yeah. I
close
think
this
we might
out?
have covered more than enough ground.
Well, I was trying to cut. I agree. I was cutting us some slack there.
Yeah. But yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this podcast. We're trying to get better. We're obviously not professionals or anything, but we're trying to do our best. I hope you're enjoying it as well. Especially because like the Pokemon podcast seems a little weird, so we're trying to spice it up a little. But we hope you enjoyed the podcast. I've been 10 Types. Check me out at 10 Types on YouTube, and I'm joined by Uncommon Fossil, of course, Uncommon Fossil on YouTube with 1M, one word,
Exactly.
and also I don't know if you're listening to us on Spotify. Are there comments? I don't know. Leave a follow.
You can leave a comment, and if you're on we're on most of the podcast apps. We've tried to get it out there. If you're listening onto any of the podcast apps, leave a review in what you're listening to because I think that will help promote things and hopefully. And if there's things you like or some changes, you can comment in the YouTube or in Spotify, and we'll see it. Right, we're kind of trying how much structured versus kind of casual discussion based. We're trying to that's part of what we're trying to figure out here.
Yeah, if you comment on a different platform other than Spotify or YouTube, there's a good chance we're not going to see it. Unfortunately, because of the way we're set up, it's just not very not really accessible for us. I don't believe, right?
Correct. We can't really see the comments for those, but again, it does help if you wanna if you like it. If you think it's a positive and you want to like it, obviously there's a limited set of Pokemon podcasts out there, so we're seeing what we can contribute in that field.
Yep. But we hope you enjoyed, and as always, we hope you tune in next week. See ya.
All right, take care.